We actually do it because our music is built around improvisation. Most of our songs are somewhere between 8 and 10 minutes long. And when we work with them before recording, they can be, one day when we play it, it's like 7.5, and the next day it's 9. That's how it works with us. So when we enter the studio, we play the song for a few times. And when it feels right, we start recording. And once that is done, and we choose one of the recordings, that is how the song will turn out. That is what's ending up on a record. And from that day, that is how we're playing the song.
Hey, what's up, Vox and Hops heads? I'm Matt, the vocalist of Cryptopsy and the host of the Vox and Hops Metal Podcast, brought to you by Sound Talent Media, where I sit down with fellow metal musicians to talk about their lives, music, and craft beer. I hope you've been having a glorious week so far. I most certainly have been. Super stoked to announce that I have teamed up with Indie Merch Store to bring you the official Vox and Hops Metal Podcast merchandise. You can go to my website, voxandhops.com/merch. That's voxandhops.com/merch to check out all of the amazing merchandise that is available there. You can also use the promo code VOXHOPS10, that's VOXHOPS10 at checkout, and you will save 10% off of your entire purchase. Before we jump into today's episode, I would just like to ask you to follow the Vox and Hops Metal Podcast on the podcast platform of your choice. But more than that, I'm also asking you to tell a friend about the podcast. If there is someone in your life that enjoys metal and craft beer, let them know about the podcast. You can tell them that there are over 280 episodes available on their favorite podcast platform for them to go back and listen to with some of the world's best metal artists and brewers. If you were to encourage someone to become a future Vox and Hops head, I would be extremely grateful. Now, on today's episode, I'm with Martin Widholm of Domkraft. Get ready, everyone. This is Vox and Hops episode number 286.
I warn you, what you are about to hear is very disturbing indeed.
Hey, what's up, everyone? Today I'm with Martin Widholm of Domkraft. How are you doing, Martin? It's really cool to be with you.
I'm doing great, thanks. This is like the first days of summer in Sweden. First hot day, sun out.
Good.
Missing times.
Sadly, you're stuck inside with me, but I appreciate you taking the time to have a chat. Let's start with a shitty question so we can dance into nicer territory afterwards. How did you cope with the glorious year that is now behind us of 2020?
Oh, it was tough. Band-wise, it was, we spent a lot of time working with material. We recorded Seeds, the album we're 21. And it was tough for us, to release an album that we've been working with for so long, not being able to play shows. It's so linked together, You release something, you go out, you meet the audience, talk to people. So there was obviously something missing for us, which was kind of sad, actually. So when we were finished recording, we just started immediately to write new stuff,
Really?
record things again, just to have something to do. We don't want to lose pace. And we did a streamed set. I don't know if you saw that,
Definitely,
like 2 weeks ago or something.
Day of Doom.
Yeah, exactly. Festival-like thing. Magnetic Eye hosting it, which was super fun because we haven't played for I think it's 14 months or something like that. So it was almost a bit scary, but it was only friends of us doing the photography. So it turned out great, actually, and it felt good. So we really want to get out there now.
Absolutely. You covered so much ground in that one question, and I love that. And we're going to go over each of those points a little bit slower in a bit more detail. I do agree that it's crazy being an artist myself. You work so hard on a record. You put your heart and soul into it. You get it out there into the world. And without being able to go out there and to actually perform it and to see how the audience reacts to it, as opposed to just reading comments or getting those messages from fans, it's a very different world to not be able to connect
very much
with
so,
an audience in a human face-to-face context. So it's coming back. I'm personally looking forward to it, and I'm sure that you are as well. But
very much so, yeah.
To put so much effort into an album and not have that, I guess you could say, reward as an artist to get that human interaction afterwards, to get the...
It's very much a reward, actually. And I actually think that I don't know if I can feel that the album is released yet, because I've only talked to people listening to it at home, mostly. And the thing is that you don't know the quality of the material until you've played it live. So we're just waiting.
That's true. It's very hard to. Sometimes like with Cryptopsy, we'll think that this is the song. This is the song. People are going to go crazy when we play this song. And then we play that song. We're like, we're never playing that song again. It just doesn't work in a live context. It's happened a few times, actually. It's actually quite funny that we anticipate a certain song being a big crowd pleaser, and then it totally doesn't connect with them for some reason. And it ends up being this other song that we didn't even value in that aspect. Very interesting.
The crazy thing about that is that it changes too. I mean, songs that didn't work that good live like 4 years ago or something can be amazing now, because I think we changed too. So
and it changes from market to market as well, like a European crowd versus a US crowd.
Exactly.
Funny how that happens. Vox and Hops is all about hanging out with my metal friends, talking about their life, music, and craft beer. Now, what beer do you have on your side there, Martin? We're going to be sharing virtually today.
Well, actually, it's a funny story, because we are really fond of beer and craft beer in the band, and most Swedish people are nowadays. But I did not know that this interview was going to be about that. We did not have that much beer home. Actually, we're having a barbecue in the yard right now, but they don't drink craft beer today. So what I'm drinking today is this, which is called Folköl, people's beer in Sweden. Okay. You know, we have a state monopoly on selling wine and liquor and stuff.
The Systembolaget.
Exactly, Systembolaget, which we could talk for hours about. But that the thing about that is you cannot buy craft beer in any grocery store. You have to go to a special place, Systembolaget, and that is closed on Saturdays after 3 o'clock. And Martin, our bass player, called me like an hour ago and said, "Do you know that you're supposed to talk about beer today?" I didn't.
No stress whatsoever.
This one today. It's an interesting story, actually, because in Sweden, craft beer is a huge thing in Sweden. We have breweries in every part of town, in every town in the country, actually, as in the US. But people's beer is a very important thing if you want to understand Swedish beer culture. This is the kind of standard beer that you buy in any gas station, any grocery store. That is what you grew up drinking when you were out skateboarding or hanging out with friends and stuff.
So it's about 3.5% ABV, right? It's all the ones that you buy outside of the Systembolaget.
Exactly.
Have to be below 3.5% ABV.
Yeah.
So to keep you guys safe.
They were actually quite boring until 5 or 10 years ago, when it totally exploded. And now you can buy really good standard beer in any grocery store because it's a big market nowadays.
I love it. And I've been speaking to a bunch of Swedish artists, so I'm very, very well versed in the culture of craft beer going on in Sweden and the explosion that happened. And it's cool that the having a rigid system, they still got creative despite having to have the low ABV. Which is refreshing. Yeah. On my side, I'm going to be drinking a Czech-inspired Pilsner by a brewery here just outside of Montreal in Aylmer, Quebec, near Gatineau. It's called Citadin. It is a Czech-inspired Pilsner, because you can't have a Czech Pilsner unless you're in Czech, in my opinion, but it's pretty damn close. Saint-Baron are one of Quebec's most popular new young breweries. They're just over a year old, and they make killer products all the time. I'm going to pour this out, and you're going to tell me about your very first people's beer, because I imagine that was also the first beer that you drank, and that's normally my next question is what was your first beer, and I'm assuming it was that.
Well, actually, that story will be about the same. If you ask any Swedish guy, it will be like the same thing. It's something that you had somewhere outside, hanging out with friends. You were that could change, of course. I guess I was like 15 or 16 or something. I really remember it. I don't remember the actual moment of the first time, but I remember the period in my life. We started to listening to punk rock. Everyone was skateboarding. Not me that much. I was starting to play guitar. We discovered you could drink beer. Life was kind of opening up, becoming something new. So people here, for people in Sweden, is the part of growing up, being a grown-up person.
I love that. Cheers. Cheers to your first beer, and cheers to still enjoying it today. I think that's amazing. I would definitely not drink my first beer today. Mainly because it doesn't exist anymore. I would try it again, but it's been discontinued. It was called Lucky Lager. It was horrible. It was malty.
Oh.
It was warm. It was over 5%, because here in Quebec we don't care about taking care of ourselves. We like to punish ourselves with high ABV beers, and it was a wild night. How about your first craft beer? The culture in Sweden is just massive, and the explosion is crazy. Do you remember the first time you had a beer outside of the 3.5% realm?
Actually, I've been interested in cooking and food and culture around that for a long time. So I've been, years ago, I was working partly as a bartender too. At that time, things were mostly about wine. And I was talking a lot at work about wine, serving it to people and stuff like that. I don't remember when craft beer arrived, so to speak, but I remember the change when restaurants and bars started to use the kind of brand they were pouring on tap as a selling point. And that was like 15 years ago, I think, or something like that. Okay. But I don't think it was until like 10 years ago that you could see in Systembolaget, as you call it, on the shelves, that it just exploded. And now it's a big thing, actually. If you're interested in going out, going to a restaurant of higher quality, they will have lots of beers and lists of them combined to work good with the food and stuff like that. So it's a super cool thing. And especially in the larger towns of Sweden, it's massive,
So exciting. I love the creativity of it all, and how it ties into food and into experiences and into our lifestyle nowadays. It's just truly amazing, and I can't wait to come back to Sweden and play shows, firstly, but also explore the massive beer culture that's going on there. I did last time, but I'd like to go even further. Let's talk about you growing up, the soundtrack of your youth. When you were growing up in your parents' or guardians' house, what music was playing when you were not in control of the radio? What music did your parents or guardians listen to?
I grew up listening to classic hard rock, a bit like that, because I have relatives who were much older than me, and they were listening to Van Halen and Pink Floyd and stuff like that. So I grew up thinking that that's what you're going to do. I started playing guitar when I was like 12. I think I bought my first electric when I was 13. I was not that into anything else than what I've been trained to like. That was Pink Floyd, Marillion, stuff like that. But when I was like, I don't remember exactly when, but perhaps 14, 15, I discovered punk rock. And that was through skateboard culture. All my friends were skateboarding. Some of us was not skateboarding, but playing that kind of music, listening to a lot of punk rock and hardcore, actually. So that's how I started up, by listening to, of course, the Ramones, but it was like Gangrene and Bad Religion and stuff like that. I started playing guitar, playing songs with 3 chords.
Just playing along to them, just by ear.
Yeah, and that's an amazing way to learn to learn with your friends in your rehearsal space. Took us like a month, and then we had a set with 8 or 9 songs. And then
it's another beautiful thing about Sweden is that you guys have such appreciation for the arts. So there's a lot of funding for music for children up 12 years old, and you have jam spaces which are basically provided by the government, right?
Yeah, exactly. We have state-funded rehearsal spaces. So we were like, amazing. I think we were 16 when we got our first own rehearsal space, shared with other bands, of course. But it's an amazing thing for young people to be able to do that. So
that's when you started drinking.
Of course, one of the keys to why there is a lot of music coming from Sweden, actually.
Exactly. Yeah. That's definitely what I think too. Getting your own rehearsal space and drinking at 16, how correlated was that?
A bit, perhaps, but actually it wasn't that much about the drinking. It was very much about the culture around punk rock, the politic stuff, skateboarding. I grew up in a very small town, and all of us in the band did. And things around that time, it's a long time ago now, was very much about being something else than the typical guy, you know. It was almost like you had to choose between doing sports, playing chess, or doing something else. And we did something else, which was, hanging out somewhere, playing music and stuff like that. So it was like a small community actually growing. And the funny thing is that most of the people I was hanging out with at that time, I still know them. Many of them are close friends living in Stockholm now.
That's when you make your choice, right? If you're going to go one way or the other way, am I going to be following the rules and doing what I'm supposed to do with my life, or am I going to carve my own path? And if you choose to carve your own path with a group of people, you tend to stay on that path together. That's 100% true. It's the same thing in Montreal. Being from Montreal and having so many prolific bands being from here, it almost seemed possible to become a rock star one day. You know, I jammed in the same building, Citadin, as Cryptopsy before I was in Cryptopsy. I knew that they had like this rumored top floor was all theirs, and they were the big stars of the building, and I'd see them crossing in the hallways, and, you know, Despised Icon jammed there, Cataclysm jammed there back in the day. So it seemed feasible to become a rock star one day. It was the same thing with you and being from Sweden, because there's so many bands.
Yeah, very much like that, actually. You know, there is a classical heavy metal Swedish scene, and it was very much happening when I was a young kid. So you saw Swedish bands not that much older than me making international careers, really making it, you know, playing the US, playing Europe, and stuff like that. So, of course, it was... that was the thing we were going to do. Everybody thought that it's just a matter of time, you know.
But you made it.
I made it many years later, yeah.
Let's talk about your first shows. How about the first show that you went to go see?
I don't remember. You know, we played our first show, I think it was in the school, in our school. When we played, we were like 14 or something like that. I still remember the first show when I discovered that music is something really different in life. And that was seeing a Swedish garage rock, punk rock band called Union Carbide Productions. I don't know if you heard them.
No, I have not.
They toured with Nirvana in the 90s. Amazing cool. Band playing wild and crazy, fussed out punk rock. And they were very new, and the sound they had was very new at the time, actually. It was when, you know, I remember bands like Nirvana and, of course, Bad Religion and stuff like that. But especially when Nirvana happened and the Bleach album came, and their first album was new. It was so fresh, something that you've never heard before. And people, older people, that would at that time be people being 18 or 20, I was like 16 or 14. They did not understand it, and that was kind of like power within it. This is our music, you know, nobody else does this. And they played a local show in the small town I came from, and it was totally amazing. I still remember, I saw it with some friends, and some of them, the people in the band I played at the time. And after the show, we took our bikes to our rehearsal space, and we decided while riding that we're gonna throw every song away. We're starting from new.
No way.
Yeah, and we did. You did that a lot at that time, though. Please.
Let's scrap it all. We're not good enough. We can do better. Amazing.
Exactly.
Well, that's an artist, right? We're never satisfied, and that's the first steps towards becoming something and somewhere. Is looking at your art and saying, I could do better, and then just doing that. It's amazing. And to have that mindset being so young is very cool, rather than just sticking it out. No, we got 48 songs. Let's talk about Seeds. Brand new record, dropped April 30th via Magnetic Eye Records. killer record, recorded live. Is that am I correct? Did you guys record this live off the ground at Welfare Sound Studios?
We always record everything live, yeah. I do some guitar dubs after,
Yeah.
Of course, I have to do that. But everything is recorded in one long session, yeah. And all this guitar solos and stuff is recorded live, yeah.
Wow. See, that's a forgotten thing. Nobody does this anymore. What is the I know the reason why, but I'm curious as to hear why you do it this way.
We actually do it because our music is built around improvisation. Most of our songs are somewhere between 8 and 10 minutes long. We have shorter songs, but most of them are. And when we work with them before recording, they can be, I mean, one day when we play it, it's like 7.5, and the next day it's 9. That's how it works with us. When we enter the studio, we know the vocal parts are always the same because it has to work out, Martin. But the solo parts, the intros, and you know, when we just pound a riff for a while, that's really different. So when we enter the studio, we play the song for a few times, and when it feels right, we start recording. And once that is done, and we choose one of the recordings, that is how the song will turn out. That is what's ending up on a record. And from that day, that is how we're playing the song.
Wow. That's stressful.
And that's when, yeah, it can really be, you know, and guitar dubs is really painful for me too, because I have never played it exactly like that before. So that can be stressful actually in the studio. But something that is really interesting, when we did our streamed set a few weeks ago, actually it turned out to be like 30 seconds longer than the album. So we actually played it almost exactly the same way as on the album. And that's how it's supposed to be for us. It's a lot of improvisation until we enter the studio, and then the song is like, yeah, it's finished. And then that's how it sounds.
Totally different than Cryptopsy. I think this is very interesting. We're a very calculated, finite machine where we go in and we know every little intricacy that's going to be there, and it's been worked on and discussed and negotiated. Whereas you guys, it's all about feeling and living in the music. I think that's very, very, very interesting. It must be.
The song changes though. I mean, the first album, we've been playing those songs for like 6 years now live. And we still play them in the same way, the same length as the album, but the feel in the hands is different now. It sounds in another way, I think, and I think in a better way. We released a live album 6 months ago or something like that, recorded in St. Vitus, Brooklyn.
Yes,
and a few of the songs are from our first album, and you can really hear the difference there. It's the same song, but it's played in a different way, actually.
Which is very. I was just thinking that as you brought up the live album, is that it's so much more interesting for you guys to do a live album versus Cryptopsy, because the song is being reinterpreted different versus us. We're just trying to play it as perfect as we can. So a live Cryptopsy album would be very boring in comparison to a live Doomkraft record. And that's why you guys have been doing some. So the fans get a different experience. And I think that's actually very smart and interesting. I love it.
Yeah.
Let's talk about this live stream. I've been doing lots of interviews, obviously. Throughout the pandemic, and I always ask about doing a live stream. I can't imagine myself doing one performing to the same hyped intensity to a camera lens versus a live crowd. To take me through your whole experience of being a part of Day of Doom. You mentioned it, that you really enjoyed it at the beginning of the interview, but I want to go deeper into this.
Yeah, it was strange actually, because we record our rehearsals actually, so we're quite used to that. Yeah, almost every time. If we work a new riff or a new idea or a new song, we record it and listen to it at home and discuss it. So we're really used to recording like that. And sometimes we record with video too, just to see how it works out. And we talked a lot about that before the stream. How are we going to do this to get, the right live feeling, so to say? Because that is sort of impossible to get the right feeling. So we went to
symbiosis
Nah, I mean, without the audience, it's not really live. But we found a studio, actually the studio where we recorded our first EP years ago, which is like it's called Rothandel in Stockholm. It's a crazy place with hundreds of old keyboards and it's like a mix between an art gallery and a studio, actually. Matthias, the guy who's in charge of it, is an amazing person, working with progressive metal bands and progressive rock bands in Sweden. So we decided to record it there. And Björn Ateldax, the guy who does our cover work, you've seen the cover of the album, I guess. It's made of skulls and craniums and the bones from different animals that he has torn apart and built new animals, actually. That's how it's made. And then, it's a 3D thing. But we had these creatures on stage and around the stage. And we worked with smoke and lightning just to get another kind of vibe, another kind of feeling, so to say. So the animals was kind of facing us. They were the audience, so to speak. And we had two guys with cameras shooting it. And yeah, it almost felt like a live thing. It wasn't the same thing, but it was something. It felt good. It's the first time. I don't think we will be a live streaming band, so to speak. I don't know if you call it that.
It's more like an art
about
piece.
It actually.
You created like an art piece.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is much more interesting than just playing in a room.
Yeah, but you can see it if you've seen it. You can see that we're acting like if we're playing at home or something. It's not at all the same thing as being together with the audience and interacting with people.
Soon.
And that is the thing with, if you work with improvisation a lot, the audience is very important because you can see on them what they like, and that changes the way you play, of course.
That happens on stage. You guys like vibe with the audience. You can say, oh no, we can bring this another 4 times.
Of course. I mean, Martin and me, the bass player, we've been playing together for more than 20 years. We can stay on a riff longer if we want to. We have that kind of, that
synergy together.
Yeah, exactly. So very often we do that live, actually. We can feel that this is really good. This is working. Let's stay here for a while. And then we do that.
How does that, this is me just being an artist on tour. How does that work when you got a time slot, though, and you have so many minutes that you have to play? Note to self, don't book Doomkraft as an opening act. Got it. Yeah. Let's talk about how you've been filling the void. I'm very lucky I get to do these interviews. Right before I sit down, I'm wondering, are we going to connect? Am I prepared enough? This fills the void of me performing on stage. How have you been filling the void of performing?
Well, actually recording. That's what we've been doing. So as I said earlier, we started almost immediately to write new stuff. And we have other things coming out within a year or 6 months or something, because we felt that we're not going to be able to play live. We don't know when. So we just started working on new material immediately. So we're releasing a split with another band. I don't know if it's out yet, which one though, but
no stress.
We did. And we recorded an AC/DC cover for a redo album that Magnetic Eye is doing.
Amazing.
Which was scary in a way, being a guitar player and doing an AC/DC song. That is.
But how is it? Is a reimagining of an AC/DC track, or is it a cover?
I would say a cover in a way, but we're playing it our way. So it's Night Prowler, and it's one of our favorite AC/DC songs all time. But we did it the Domkraft way, so it's slower and you have to hear it.
I'm excited. Yeah, I'm definitely gonna check that out.
It was fun, a bit scary but fun.
Let's talk about a Doomkraft brew. If you can do, I'm like super involved in collabs. I like making beer collabs. Your friends Summoner are a part of Brutal North America, where I hooked them up with Gilded Skull and Widowmaker, and they made a Summoner brew. What would be a Domkraft brew? What style of beer and what would you call it?
Oh, I guess we would call it riff, hook, repeat or something like that. That's
I like that, actually. Yeah.
The print thing that we have on our T-shirts and stuff like that. I don't know what it would be, actually. I suppose an American pale ale of sorts. Actually, Anderson Martin, they are really specialists in the field. You know, they are untapped guys. Better than me, actually, in talking about beer culture and stuff like that. But I guess that's what it would be. If you were to do a Domkraft beer, it would be an American pale ale that you can drink all the time.
You riff it, you hook it, you repeat it.
Exactly.
I love it. What has been the best part of COVID for you? The shining light, the silver lining of COVID for you?
I guess that would be slowing down the pace. I mean, personally, you spend much time with your family and you can't do anything but that. We have been able in Sweden to go to our rehearsal space. That's how it's been. So we have been playing a lot and together and just fooling around with the idea of the Domkraft sound. So trying to change it, not change it actually, but working with it. That has been really interesting.
It to evolve.
Yeah. What is it? We never really discussed our sound actually, because we're not classically skilled musicians. When we play, this is how it sounds. We couldn't do it in another fashion. I don't think so. This is how it sounds when Domkraft plays. So when we decide to do something different, it's usually doing something really slow or something lighter in a way like that. So we've been experimenting a lot. But usually it actually turns out to be Domkraft. So it's slow, amazing. It's heavy, it's repetitive.
Hypnotic, keeping us in the zone. I love it. One last question, classic wrap-up question. Probably doesn't happen to you very often because you're drinking the people's beer today, which is a low ABV brew, but every once in a while, let's say, you're at St. Vitus and you're having too many non-low ABV brews, you end up with a hangover. So what is your hangover cure?
I would say take a long walk listening to music.
Love it. That's a great idea. Martin,
I actually do that without a hangover because I'm really fond of long walks. But that would be my...
Now you have time to do that.
When you're on tour, you're always carrying stuff too. So you're carrying like amps and guitars and loads of stuff. So you don't have the time to think about headache. You just work.
That's true. If you bask in a hangover, I tend to find that it's worse as opposed to being active and moving your body elsewhere and moving your mind elsewhere.
Exactly.
Mind over matter. Martin, thank you so much for taking the time, having a chat with me. Everyone, go listen to Seeds. It came out April 30th via Magnetic Eye Records. I'm super stoked about it. Martin, thank you so much. This is a great chat. I really appreciate you taking the time to hang out.
Thank you for having us. Cheers.
Hey, thank you all so much for listening right to the end. You know that I love and appreciate that. I had such a blast connecting with Martin. I love how different Domkraft and Cryptopsy are as their approach to creating music, as their approach to recording music. I thought that was super interesting. I can't wait to hook up with Martin next time he comes to Montreal, or if I'm over there in Sweden. I think we're going to have a good time together. If you enjoyed this Vox and Hops episode, you should sign up to the Vox and Hops Metal Podcast's mailing list. You could do that on my website, VOX&HOPS.com. That's VOXANDHOPS.com. And when you do that, you shall receive one email a week containing all of the details of everything that has happened throughout the past week in the world of the Vox and Hops Metal Podcast. There is a lot of things going on in the world of the Vox and Hops Metal Podcast, so I would hate for you to miss a single thing. So please do me a favor and sign up to the mailing list. The Vox and Hops Metal Podcast is brought to you by Sound Talent Media. I will be back next week with 3 episodes, and I have to tell you that next week's episodes will be the last episodes for an entire month. That's right. I am taking 1 month off from releasing episodes. The whole month of August, there will be no new Vox and Hops episodes. So next week's episodes will be the last episodes for a whole month. So get ready for those. But until then, remember to enjoy life, metal, and craft beer. Cheers, Vox and Hops heads.